Hey, everybody. It's great to be here. Thanks so much to Volvox for putting this together. Thanks to Derivative and all the other sponsors. It's really special to get a community together. I really, feel the vibe, the devotion here. Everyone, I can tell, is really dedicated, not only because it's hot and it's the middle of the day, because everyone's here for this pretty deep technical content. I'm really impressed. Great, so today I'm going to talk about state machines for interactive projects. And, some people within the touch designer community are coming from a computer science background. They know all about this. They do a lot of programming. Other people in this community are coming from VFX, from animation, and this might be a new topic for some of you. Even if you do a lot of computer science, I think that it could still be interesting to see how ideas like this, really classic ideas like a state machine, are implemented in touch designer. Everyone probably has their own way to do it. I also want to note, thanks for showing my work, Volvox. The installation at the threshold there, the video art, that's me. It's not related to what I'm talking about today, but it's some new work I've been experimenting with, so I hope you enjoy it. So hi, I'm Franck. I'm an experiential creative director. I've been working in this field for quite a long time. With a number of people who are here, I've collaborated with a lot of you. So I specialize in large-scale media installations and, like really sculptural work, immersive work. I love bringing audiences into, immersive digital spaces, but I like doing that in the real world. I like bringing people together. So this drives a lot of my work. You're seeing some projects here from my time with ESI Design on the bottom right. This is Murmurations. It's a volumetric light installation. Adam, the technical director, is here. And yes, Adam also technical directed this project. This is for Spectrum. This is a live data visualization, a real-time data visualization of their network traffic across their entire, across this country. And a couple other fun ones here. My background is in art. I studied art. I also studied architecture. And I worked for a long time as a creative technologist, but the artistic side, the architectural and design side has always been a real motivator for me. And I've been using Touch Designer for 14 years, you guys. When I started my career, I was really very much the person who was doing projection mapping, making Touch Designer software. I was full-time using this tool. Here's some images of baby me. This is me VJing for a Spotify show at South by Southwest. That's me VJing my own commission work, Carapace, at the Society for Art and Technology, and so a real-time immersive dome show. And then different pieces that I've done with different studios, agencies, Obscure Digital, Fake Love. It's been a wild ride. And I really liked how Isabel started us off today, talking about the lineage of Touch Designer, that it's this thing that, is really being transmitted person to person quite often. And so I wanted to give a shout out to my friend and mentor, Sarah Mason, who taught me Touch Designer and introduced me to Touch Designer in 2010 at Obscure Digital. And he actually introduced me, or she now introduced me to the concept of state machines, and so I wanted to share this idea with all of you if you are not already familiar. So a state machine is a software design pattern. A software design pattern is a general reusable solution to a commonly occurring problem, right? We solve the same kinds of problems often over and over again, and so it really makes sense to approach these projects with a sense of a template or an idea, whether or not that's actually in code, just the sense of a structure that you would want to use to approach a project. And why would we care? Why would we use design patterns? Using design patterns, it's an approach in which every component is designed, tested, and maintained independently. It's this idea of encapsulating or separating different pieces of functionality within your program. And this makes your code more reusable. You can make it more modular, makes it more reliable. It's easier to track down your bugs. It makes it more extensible. And by that I mean you can keep adding pieces onto it. I think that Gabe's talk is a great example of that. And it makes it more scalable. It makes it easier to collaborate with other people. It makes it easier to share a code base with other developers at a studio, for example. And and then it's, at this point I have this big code base of my own, and I'm often repurposing different code snippets or ideas. So I'm going to talk about two design patterns today. I'm going to talk about the model view controller design pattern. And this is really classic. I feel like the most Touch Designer projects are some form of this. I think it's also helpful to remember that these ideas actually predate graphic user interfaces. So in this idea, the idea is that you separate the interface with which someone controls your software, the control logic or the controller, and the algorithm itself, the thing that's working under the hood. And the other pattern I'm going to talk about is the state machine. And yeah, this idea was invented in 1955. Kind of cool, right? That's like the Paleolithic in terms of computational years. And a state machine is just the idea that the software exists in different states, and those states are discrete. They're completely separated, and that there are these transition moments from one state to another. So an example might be, I might, as an individual, I might have my work state, and there's like a transition to my home state where I do different things. They're defined transitions from one state to another. And so in defining a problem and approaching it with a state machine, some of the steps, some of the things that it needs to do are initialize. We want to initialize our states. I might brush my teeth to initialize my bed state. We also have event handling. The alarm might be the event that triggers me waking up and going home, or into the rest of my space. And and then state handling, the actually processing of what's happening in a given state. And then the transitions, I feel like the transitions are really where the magic happens. This is where the puppies are separated from the big dogs. And then, there's a sense of repetition, the ability to be able to reset. So I'm going to talk about this idea within the context of a project that I created for Puma with faculty. And this project was Color Outside the Lines painting experience. This was installed in Foot Locker at their headquarters, or not their headquarters, excuse me, their flagship locations in New York and in Chicago. And this was an extension of a traditional ad campaign, Color Outside the Lines campaign. And this was a hands-on interactive installed in the store. And so the idea here is that visitors to the store can make their own painting in the style of the campaign. And so there's a series of steps that they can go through to do this gestural painting using a Kinect sensor. And I think in a way this is actually like a very platonic interactive project. Like this is kind of classic, right? And so I think that makes it a great project for discussing these ideas. So let me switch over to my software. So the first pattern that I talked about, the model view controller pattern, I think that's really exemplified by the painting engine. So the painting engine over here, it has this area, this controller area, where it's processing Kinect data. In this case, I've circumvented the real controller by using recorded Kinect data for our presentation today. And it handles and processes that user data. There's a junction to separate it from the rest of the project. The core of the engine is this three-dimensional trail effect. So as people move their hands, it creates a trail, a three-dimensional trail, and that has this brush stroke applied to it. And then a feedback system allows that effect to be built into a painting with a beginning and an end. Yeah, so great, model view controller. That's a lot of projects, right? But in order to turn this into an interactive, I needed to create a sequence and a series of states. Here's my design documentation for this project. So mapping out the process of how a project is going to evolve or change with the user. I think it's always really helpful to get this on paper. How does one state transition lead to the next? The first state is an attract state. It's the invitation to engage. The next state actually is triggered when it detects presence. So it reacts to people before they touch the screen. And it can either time out or they can touch to continue. So there's either way on that state. Whoops. There's a moment of instruction for the user. And then there's the core of the experience, the painting effect. And then there's a couple of outro steps. There's an opportunity for them to take a selfie and just kind of like an artistic outro. And this is the user interfaces for these moments. So attract, begin, someone picks their palette, someone does their painting, they get to take a selfie, and so there's this really clear progression through different states. So stepping back to my program here, let's see, use my bookmarks. So here's an example. Sorry, actually, let me step up. here's my state machine. There's a container for each of the states that we discussed. And this is really simple, right? It's like nothing complicated. So here's my first state, the attract state. Here's the second state. It's the palette selection. This is this educational moment where people get to play around with the effect before their painting starts. The opportunity where they get to conclude their painting or try again. And then there's an outro. We go back to the beginning. These states share some global variables. They share a background, so visually that's happening over here, the branding. But they also have some global variables. And I was a little bit shy about showing this, but I'm actually just keeping my variables in a chop. This is not extensions. Part of this comes from because I'm old school. I'm like original gangster touch designer programmer. But it also can be this simple. You don't have to do something more complicated. And I kind of like the ease of just being like, oh, now I want to be in state 4. Yeah. So back to my presentation. This is the logic that allows this progression through different states. It's like I said, it's pretty straightforward. There are a couple things that happen at the top level, at the global level across the program. And then there's a sequence of things that happen at the local level within each state. So the global variables, state, obviously. There's a couple others, like which palette we're using, whether or not we're in a transition. That's helpful for debugging. A couple other things. And when the state changes, that runs a control script. This script basically dispatches. It's like, okay, who's up next? You're up next. And it runs the initializer script, which is local inside the state. And the initializer script does things like start a timer, because a lot of these states time out. It might set the defaults for that state. And then all the stuff that needs to happen in the state, which can be a lot of things. Something that I like about this design pattern is that it affords a lot of flexibility. Each state can actually be very custom. This magic happening here in the middle can be quite different from state to state. It can actually, we can have these tiny little states, or we can have these very extensive ones. And that's all just kind of handled with a nice little package. And then when that's done, whether that's the user clicking a button or the timer ends, then there's some kind of outro script. And this is what handles the transitions. So if I want to fade things out nicely, if I want to have some kind of acknowledgement for the user before moving to the next state, I do that with the outro script. And then that then triggers a state end script, which is what controls the global state. So we're going back up to the top level and changing the state. So let me show you that in the software. So here's my global variables, and here's my control script. And this just basically what this does is tell the script of the destination state to run. Okay, so a simple example of that is the first state, that palette selection state that I mentioned. You can see here, here's the state begin. This is the initialization state. It's starting a timer. It's setting some local variables to be defaults, and that's about it. It starts this timer, and if the timer finishes, it can run the outro, or if someone clicks a button, that also runs the outro. And then, where is it? The state end just sets the global state. So that one's really straightforward. The way that I'm incorporating the painting engine here is I'm actually selecting and pulling that into one of the states as a UI. So one of the states becomes the view component of our model. So here's the state that handles the painting logic. And this is basically kind of wrapping around or putting a shell around the painting engine that we looked at before. Has a lot of the same components, state initialization, a way to handle timeout, and a little bit more logic, a couple of buttons. What do we do if we reset? Okay, we refresh our palette, the canvas. And then there's a save function as well. So if someone, once they approve their painting, it goes in this gallery. We actually saved all the paintings that people made, which is several hundred. And then it's actually just selecting in the painting over here. So I'll demo this. Let's see here. Like I said, this is using recorded Connect data just to keep things a little bit simpler. What do we think? 1, 2, 3. Who's for 1? All right, you guys went. Okay. All right. So this would normally show a camera feed, so that users have a moment to familiarize themselves with the control, to understand that they're in control of the effect. All right. The painting has begun. I introduced this splatter effect, which I think makes it a lot more fun. They have 30 seconds to paint. They have some time to, take a photo or document it. We didn't want to capture people's email or anything like that. And then we get to see a gallery of all the paintings that have been made before. So, or like not all of them, but the last, like however many that is, like 20. All right, and then we're reset. We've like reset our state. We're back to state 0. So yeah, very, very smooth progression. Not a lot of branches, but there's a couple of moments that get handled. All right. All right, we looked at those. Yeah, so it was a really fun project. I enjoy making these kinds of expressive installations, and I think that these concepts of design patterns are reusable. I hope that you all share the way that you implement these design patterns. I think it's interesting that people approach these in pretty different ways. So yeah, let me know if you have any comments after the talk. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions? Oh, nice fan feedback right there. Once again, any sound artists in the room? It's perfect.
Thank you. Hey, I was wondering if you're using the first sort of flow diagram you share with the different states. Is that something you use when you work with clients, or is this something you made for this presentation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the other thing, is that approaching like software architecture in this kind of clear way, it really helps with coordination with other team members, right? I was able to explain this program to the client in a really clear way. They signed off on everything. It made the whole process of approvals and client understanding really easy. So yeah, design documentation for the win. Yeah, and certainly we had a few revisions, but we were able to do that on paper rather than doing it in code. Thank you.
One quick question for the snap a selfie portion at the end. I'm curious, why not integrate a camera in there? Oh, I'm back here. Sorry, I see you looking around.
I was looking. Thanks.
Why not integrate like a camera in there instead, have somebody use their phone? Was it more so like a concern because of budget and timeline, or was it client privacy concerns?
It's more about personal data management. And then also, we had a really small footprint for our installation. And I think that like installing a camera would have involved like more coordination. We would have had to attach it to a wall. It just would have gotten more complicated. It was nice to make something that was, ground supported. We just load it in, set it up, and it's self-contained. I mean, also, like this is kind of oriented towards children. And so, it's like, we didn't want to handle children's data either.
Hi. Oh, Jesus. Great talk. I'm curious to know if you have any or if you could talk a little bit about how you work with events within these or handling events within these types of state machines. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. So I think scripting is really the key for handling events in a discrete way, right? So an event would be a button click, for example, that's selecting the palette. That's an event, and that's handled with a script. So the script allows for the separation of control. So there, sometimes we want to have continuous control, like having that continuous input from the Connect controller, and other times we want to have this really discrete control, and I like scripting for those moments. So I can step back to, I think this is, let's see. So if the timer times out, that's an event, and this just it double checks that we're still in the right state before changing the global state. But it's like, oh, we've timed out of our state. We're still in the state. Let's let's go to the end of our state. So we'll handle our nice outro where we fade everything out, and then we'll change states.
We have time for one more, if anyone. I have a question. Could you talk to us about this process you made for creating these interactive brush strokes? They're really beautiful and
Thank
pretty
you.
dynamic.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think this is an iterative process, right? When is this kind of thing not? And the after handling the control information, the Connect does something where it does a good job of remembering different players, but this was a little bit challenging if different people were walking through the activation, and so I needed to collapse the different player data into just 2 players, so 2 people can do this at the same time. There's some signal processing to smooth out the gestures and stylize them a little bit, and then there's this trail effect, and let's see, I haven't actually looked at this part in a little while. Trail effect, which is a lot of chop logic, and then there's some math to help these stay fairly oriented to the camera. And then this is it's a rectangle that's flying around in space and being deformed, and then it has an alpha mask being applied to it. And then we have these beautiful palettes, which we tested these a lot to get these to be something that looked good once it was mixed. And there's kind of an ongoing, noise-driven, different color cycling that's happening, so that we get the sense of different brush strokes, different colors within the stroke, and the splats are applied at random intervals, but also there's some signal processing on the gesture, so that when you move faster or bigger, then you get bigger brush strokes. You can also do kind of fine, small gestures to make finer strokes, and the size of the paint splatters is also proportional to the motion. All right.
Thank you so much. Round of applause.